Welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Binyamin, Tjong-Alvares with the news from the global economy. Today's show, new Israeli technology, Sesame, opens a new world for the disabled. And Africans may soon have their own homegrown competitor to Starbucks. First, the headlines. Oil dropped below $48 a barrel on Wednesday amid speculation U.S. provisions will expand, deepening a global supply glut. Brent crude fell to $49.98 a barrel in early trade, its lowest level since April 2009, while West Texas Intermediate plunged to $47.06 a barrel. Though the current price slump has been driven mainly by oversupply, demand itself may take a big hit this year as well. And though ever cheaper fuel stimulates the global economy, it also creates political tension by squeezing government revenue and social benefits. U.S. stocks fell and the Standard & Poor's 500 index slid for a fifth straight day on Tuesday, its longest losing streak in 13 months. Small cap and energy shares weighed down the S&P 500 after oil dropped below $50 a barrel. Though the falling oil price is a boon for consumers, it also forces industrial companies to cut back on capital expenditure. And as industrial companies are projected to slash capital spending this year by 15%, the first decline since 2009, layoffs are not far off. U.S. Steel Corp, the country's second biggest steel producer, said it will lay off more than 750 employees as the oil price slump cuts investments by energy companies. Royal Dutch Shell will pay out $83 million in compensation for two oil spills in Nigeria in 2008 and 2009. Shell agreed to compensate 15,600 Nigerian fishermen and their community after it was devastated by two massive oil spills in the Niger Delta. It is the largest ever out-of-court settlement relating to oil spills in Nigeria, but still a fraction of the $453 million originally sought. Each member of the community will receive $3,249, while $30 million will go to a trust fund for projects such as health clinics and schools.
It's been a fabulous case. I mean, it's a tough case against Shell, who are tough opponents, but in the end, it's a fair deal. For us, the main thing is to see the happiness on the faces of all those thousands and thousands of people who've been so badly damaged in terms of their ability to fish.
Ukrainian bonds have sunk to a record low on concerns that the strife-torn country will default this year. According to a sovereign debt analysis tool developed by the Financial Times and the IMF, Ukraine's debts have spiraled far higher than expected. Kiev's debt-to-GDP ratio is likely to approach 90% in 2015, more than doubled from 2013, and at a level that the IMF often deems unsustainable. The IMF estimates that Ukraine needs another $15 billion to avert a default, but remains at odds with the US and the EU over who will foot the bill. Japanese carmaker Nissan plans to maintain investment and increase its share in the Brazilian auto market despite a drop in car sales across the country last year. Nissan sees potential in Brazil, South America's largest auto market, where it hopes to increase its market share to 3.3% in 2015 from the current 2.5%. Though Brazil is the world's fifth largest auto market, there are only 179 automobiles for every 1,000 citizens. And though it just launched a new 3-cylinder, 1-liter model to be built in its plant in Rio, its success also depends on the government's economic strategy.
The answer lies with the government. I hope that the government will soon share its economic policy so we can make the right decisions.
A new Israeli technology, Sesame, just opened up the world of smartphones to the disabled, giving sufferers of ALS, Parkinson's, and MS the ability to use their smartphones without assistance. More in this report by Daniel Roth.
A touch-free phone is helping to ensure that mobility-impaired people are able to use smartphones by using their heads. The Israeli startup called Sesame, founded in 2011, has successfully tested a Google Nexus smartphone on 10 users living with different types of paralysis.
Sesame created the world's first touch-free smartphone. it is a smartphone for people who can't move their hands, people with disabilities, from spinal cord injuries to cerebral palsy to ALS to more. Through voice control and head movements, you can operate the entire phone, download any app you want, and it will work right out of the box.
The inspiration for this technology came when 64-year-old quadriplegic electrical power engineer Giora Livne challenged Oded Ben-Dov to use tech that the latter had developed for a video game in order to help make phones more accessible.
I can do everything with the phone. I can call, I can receive calls, I can use SMS, WhatsApp, I can play games, and in the very, very near future, I will be able to operate a lot of things at home.
The phone works with a technology that allows navigating to apps and various features using head movements, and potential uses abound.
For my personal account, I still don't have communication with the outside world in terms of technology and the progressive world. With this application, an opportunity is opened up and gives me and many people an equal chance to be like everyone.
Sesame Enable is one of the top 10 finalists in a major innovation award process worth millions, so the team has much to look forward to.
Even though the price of petrol in Israel dropped 63 Israeli cents per liter last week, the drop in the price of gas is out of sync with the fall in crude. In October 2007, when a barrel of oil was $92 and $1 was around 4 shekels, like today, the price of unleaded fuel was 5.97 shekels per liter, 30 cents less than today. Baker Tilly Israel CPA and tax expert Guy Reshtik joins us in the studio for a clearer understanding of this phenomenon. Mr. Reshtik, thanks for joining us.
Hi, good evening.
So why is the price of unleaded fuel in Israel so high?
Well, I think that the answer is quite straightforward and simple, because if you look at how the price comprises from, only 30% approximately of the price is the world price of the fuel. The other 70% goes to 10% to the fuel companies, as you know, as the profit, and the other 60%, almost 60%, is the taxation.
Right.
So it's quite enormous. I mean, if you look at it, 60% it comprises from one tax that calls the blo, which is a specific tax that is designated for fuel, for example, fuel, tobacco, alcohol, etc.
Right.
And so it's enormous. It's almost 3 shekels per liter, which is 40% of the price. And then you have another tax that calls VAT, the value-added tax, which is an additional 18%.
Now, for what I understand, I mean, originally the price, the taxes on the price of oil in Israel were based on the fact that cars were considered a luxury item, and so, your average family didn't necessarily have cars. That obviously is not the same today. Why is the price so high still? Why are taxes so high?
Well, if you look at the budget, almost 80 billion shekels went to the budget from this fuel taxation. So still, it's a very enormous number. And then, if you would like to...
So it's not a luxury item anymore, but the government obviously needs the money, needs the income.
Exactly.
Can it take it from somewhere else?
Well, it can. One thing from those prices that it cannot control is the world price. This is something that is defined. What it can control is first of all the taxation, which they can lower it, and they can manage the profit of the fuel companies, because it's not something that is not defined. So, for example, if you will cancel the double taxation on the fuel, because, as I told you, there is the blo, which is 40%, and there is the VAT, which is 18%, and additional to the blo. So if you will cancel the double taxation, then you'll see it decreased.
Okay. So where would the government get the additional revenues from, so to speak? What else can be done in order to simplify the situation?
Well, this is the $1 million question, $1 million question, because we want to decrease the taxes, but still we have to take something, because it's like a balance.
Right.
It cannot be balanced.
Right.
So there are different solutions, as we said before, about how and from where to take the money.
Right.
But still, this specific tax, you and I pay it, everyone pays it. It's not a luxury anymore, as you said.
Yes. Well, Mr. Guy Reshtik, CPA and tax expert from Baker Tilly, Israel. There are elections coming up. I hope someone's listening out there. You know, this obviously is something that should be remedied.
This is the time.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Rwanda's finest Arabica beans rarely remain on African soil, but a new Nigerian initiative hopes to change that as it strives to become the Starbucks of Africa. Here's the story.
Rwanda's finest Arabica beans usually don't stay on African soil long. The vast majority are exported to the coffee shops of Europe and the United States. But Nigerian Ngozi Dozie, with his budding Cafe Neo brand, is hoping to keep a little more of the coffee on the continent.
So Neo in Swana, from Botswana, means gift. And of course, Neo also means new in Latin. So for us, it's a new way of, a new approach to coffee. A new approach where we as Africans drink the coffee that we produce that's been a gift for us, as opposed to exporting it and importing, sub-grade coffee.
With 3 outlets in Lagos and 1 in the Rwandan capital, Kigali, Neo has Africa-wide ambitions. Part of the challenge is to make coffee drinking part of a daily routine, something that's still alien to most here in Nigeria. Almost all of Neo's trade comes from those who've imported their caffeine habit from abroad.
99% of our customers are returnees, journey returnees, and of course foreigners. Yeah, you find that the other ones, they got a chance of, visiting other Western countries or Europe.
Chukwuka is one of these returnees, bringing with him from the United States a yearning for a daily dose.
I am a Starbucks person. Anytime I go to the States or outside the country, I look for Starbucks, and the first thing I do, I grab a coffee. And now that I have Cafe Neo, I come to Cafe Neo for my cafe latte.
While not yet a global player, Neo hopes that if Africans can develop a taste for homegrown beans, it can create a stir to rival Starbucks.
And now for a look at some other newsworthy articles in Media Watch with Daniel Roth. Daniel, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So I understand we're going to look at basic income, right?
Yes. Vice magazine had a piece by actually a previous guest on our show, Nathan Schneider.
Yeah.
He was writing about basic income. Essentially, this is the idea that just for being alive, you deserve the right to live. That the government or someone ought to provide a basic living wage just for being, and that people will be productive because people are productive as we face more and more apps and machines and robots and from everything from fast food to taxi driving to journalism replacing the jobs that people used to have. The big question is, how will people live? And so one of the answers is people should just be given money. So one of the things that Nathan uncovered is this interesting point that you have tech billionaire libertarians on one side and left-wing socialist Occupy activists on the other side, now both calling for a basic income. They're both calling for the same thing, which is this very interesting phenomenon as we face forward to a new sort of 21st century economy.
All due respect, I mean, both the tech libertarians as well as the socialist occupiers, I mean, they're both generally very educated, very motivated people, which is not true for your average person necessarily.
Right. So the big question is, what will people do if they're given enough money to live without doing anything? This is one of the fundamental questions nobody really has the answer to. The big difference between the tech billionaires and the socialist Occupy activists is essentially where the money's coming from. Tech billionaires look at this as sort of venture capital project. Here we are, we're going to make sure that people get enough money to live so they can create ideas the way we created ideas.
Okay. Interesting idea, but okay, let's move on to the next topic on inequality.
Okay, so the OECD recently came out with a study. The OECD, which has been a large proponent of austerity measures, of sort of keeping balanced books, not spending more, came out with a study that said inequality is hurting growth. They found that over the years 1990 to 2010, that inequality, primarily the effect of poor people not having access to education, will diminish your growth. And they found this over 2 decades, that countries like New Zealand suffered 16% less growth than they could have had over those 20 years because of inequality. Simply because of inequality. Mexico was on that list, the most unequal country in the OECD. The US, Sweden, Italy, were across the board, wherever there was inequality between classes, they found that growth suffered. So the end point here is that the two elements of economics are not unrelated.
Right, obviously. Well, Daniel Roth, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, well, that concludes our Economy Magazine on those notes of basic income and inequality. Your daily source for economic and financial reports at i24 News. I'm Binyamin Tjong-Alvares. Thanks for joining us, and do join us again tomorrow.